Good morning and welcome to Inspiration Summit. I'm excited to moderate today's session on Making Your Move, a guide to career transitions. This event is all about exploring the different paths you can take in your professional journey. My name is Kumud Bika, and I am the VP of Account Management at the Muse. I'm excited to be joined by our panel of experts who will share their insights on navigating career transitions and provide practical tips to help you succeed in your next move. Let's begin with brief introductions from our panelists. We'll begin with you, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Walker, Senior Vice President of Retail Wireless Operations for Dish. Glad to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, glad to have you. Well, Dayna.
Hi, my name's Dayna Johnson. I am the Emerging Technologies Programs and Operations Leader for GE Gas Power. Thank you for getting us all together today for this important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you. And last but certainly not least, Nanci.
Hi, I'm Nanci Ferrari. I lead entry-level talent hiring in the talent acquisition space for Infosys.
All right, well, wonderful. Well, welcome again. So let's go ahead and get started. I would love to start by hearing your personal experience with career transitions and or pivots. What inspired you to make a career transition and what were the challenges you faced during this process? We'll go ahead and start with you, Lisa.
Great, thank you. So I started my career with a 2-year technical degree in instrumentation and process control, which is really kind of a combination of math and physics and operations and plant management. It's all the instruments to run manufacturing plants. I knew I loved technology. I loved working with my hands, but I also really loved the science behind operations. So I started as a technician, and my last assignment sort of in that role was to pick, design, and implement a massive process control system for the piece of the plant operations I was in charge of. And I loved that piece of my work and started thinking about, if I take the things that I love the best and I feel like I contribute the most to, what other sorts of career pieces could that lead to? And that led to taking on a new role as a project leader who did that for many operations across the US. And as I worked through that career and loved the customer interface and learning new operations and about new processes, I learned that I really loved the operations piece. And what was interesting about that was taking sort of the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. So if it's a manufacturing process, if it's growing teams, it's being able to assemble all those piece parts into something greater than the components are on their own. So I moved into operations management after that, really by this process of looking at what do I like best, where do I feel like I provide the best value, what's most interesting, what gets me excited to get up in the morning, and finding someone who does that to ask, how did you get there? What did you need to know? What do you love about your job? What keeps you up at night? And working on the pieces that I needed to get there. And from that, I took on additional roles in operations management that weren't in my lane, so moved outside of manufacturing by applying all those same principles and disciplines that you learn about tools like value stream mapping and lean manufacturing methodology into overall operations management for larger and larger groups. So if I look at sort of some of the pieces of the questions is what were the challenges? The challenges are always, you have to learn new things, you have to put in the extra time, you have to take risks, you have to find a coach and a mentor, you have to look at your strengths and your weaknesses and find people who can help prop you up in the places where you aren't strong. And then challenges during that time is, it was interesting to hear Stacey London talk about, you really have to put in the extra effort. That is very true in career transitions. It's not a 40-hour-a-week sort of work, never is. So you have to do what you're good at in your current job today, plus all the preparation for what is next. And when you start a new role, it's all the extra hours to learn, get feedback, get coaching, refine, and to where you get really good at what you're doing. And one of the things that I also would add on to sort of Stacey's approach was aspiration without hard work is nothing but a dream. So you got to put in the hard work to get to that next level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think when you find something you truly believe in and you're passionate about, it pushes you, it inspires you to do more. So I love hearing that from you. Dayna, would love to hear from you as well.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to echo something Lisa said, and I wrote it down because I think it's that valuable. when you're talking to people, what do you love about your job and what keeps you up at night? Those are two very important questions when you're looking at really taking a pivot. So I'm going to write those down someplace I don't lose them. Thanks for that, Lisa.
Thanks.
I started my career as a civil engineer, and I did that for quite some time, and I really loved it at the time, right? So I got to a point where I was looking for something more. And to be clear, I was the civil engineer at a very small company. So if my name was not on the door, I was not going to get that next promotion I wanted. And about that time, I decided, this is not only in my hand, or this is only in my hands. There's some stuff I can do to really make this change myself. So I went back to school and I got a Master of Engineering Management, which is for those that are not super technical. I'm guessing we've got some of those folks on the line as well. It's like a technical MBA, really, something that I could take and leverage outside of just the job I had already. And when I looked across what I could do next with that, I mean, the whole purpose of getting that was finding out what was next for me, finding out what would really get me up and out of bed in the morning and continue working. So I started looking at different opportunities that I would still be able to use those technical skills, but be able to gain more of that business leadership and understand some more of what was coming next. So the first thing I did while I was wrapping up that degree was I quit my day job and I was the co-founder of a startup. Stacy talked some about making sure you've got the resources to keep something like that working. So that was a little bit of a challenge, making sure that that was something I could do. But it was something that in my mind had a deadline. I was coming in on the business side. I was making sure that we could get incorporated and we could get some of that very early frontline work up, right? What do we need to do from a marketing plan perspective? And what do we need to do to really get established? Even, mundane stuff like, where are we incorporating? Things like that. So I did that. Like I said, I knew I had a deadline with that. And I think, there's all sorts of challenges that come with a startup. And we can surely think about some of the big ones. The one that I hit was I had gotten in such a rut, and I'm sure some of us hit this in COVID because I was working from home all the time, that once the mailman changed his route and was not coming to my house early in the morning and I was now the last house, I kind of realized it was time. I was ready to go back to corporate America. So I took that dive. I started really looking for, again, how can I use my technical skills, but also some of the business skills that I've started to fold in between my degree and being the co-founder of a startup. And I'd say I cast a pretty wide net. I always struggle with the question of where do you want to be in 5 years? Because if I had to answer that 15 years ago, I would have been wrong. Full disclosure, I would have been wrong, and I don't like being wrong. So it was very much a let's cast a wide net. Let's see what comes up. And through some searching, I'd say soul searching and job searching, I ended up at GE. I went into GE and sold my manager at the time on, well, let's be honest, right? Electrical distribution systems aren't that much different than water and wastewater distribution systems, right? Again, maybe for the technical folks out there, they don't seem that much different, but there's some very distinct differences. However, he bought it. He hired me. This is almost 11 years later. I'm still there, and I've gone through a number of transitions even while at GE. So I hired in as a proposal manager, and of course the challenge is, much like Lisa was sharing, you're coming up to speed, in my case, in a different industry, in a different function. I came in to what was more of a technical sales type role, something where I really had to, one, get up to speed, and two, kind of pivot my mindset, right? The engineering mindset I had always had to change just a little bit. But after doing that for 5 years, I was ready for something else. I joined GE's Accelerated Leadership Program, which a lot of companies have entry-level leadership programs. This is more for your experienced hires. Did that for 2 years, took another role, and then took another really hard pivot. I had spent nine years in commercial roles at GE, in sales, marketing, different things like that. And I moved over to, you heard my job title, I'm in operations now. So completely different, but something that I felt like would help round out my skill set, something that I felt like I was getting exposed to a different product that I hadn't really worked with before. So I I took the opportunity to look at it as a real advantage, a real opportunity to grow my career and continue to improve my leadership skills. And here I am today.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Again, I'm seeing and hearing a common theme. And before I kind of sum this up, Nanci, would love to hear from you as well, because I feel like you're going to be sharing very similar stories that we just heard from Lisa and Dayna. But yes, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Sure, absolutely. Lots of similar things and some differences. My undergrad is in corporate communications, and I entered the corporate world right out of school and had a very entry-level HR job and thought this is not for me. I have no interest in corporate America. And I went and got a master's degree in elementary education. So I started teaching in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and taught there for many, many years, as I also was having a family. And I think I was home maternity leave with my fourth child. And it occurred to me that maybe this wasn't the career that I wanted, and maybe I needed to do some reevaluating. You can't go to parent-teacher conferences when you're a teacher for your own children. You can't go on field trips, all of that kind of stuff. So I really took a look, one, at my undergrad degree. Could I go back to that and do anything with it? The experience that I had teaching and all of the strengths that brought to me, and the experiences that brought. And what do I do with this? And I started talking to different friends who had stayed in the corporate world to find out what they were doing, to ask questions about what types of careers, and also to ask them about me. What did they think I could do with my strengths? And, knowing me as they did, where did they think I could go? And I wound up in campus recruiting. I was able to get a contract position working 15 to 30 hours a week. At the time, the big sell was I got a laptop and I could talk to adults, having come from being home with 4 young children. And I loved it. I found that I absolutely loved it. The scary part there was entering the corporate world, coming from being an elementary school teacher, and everybody in the room must know that I know nothing about corporate America, right? And you quickly learn that everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing every day. And there are people to ask, never to be afraid to ask. And that's what I started doing very early in my career, and finding mentors, learning more about the organization, learning more about where the career paths would be for campus hires once they got in. So really not just being that campus recruiter, but taking it into the whole organization became really important to my growth. I went from being the contract recruiter to then being full-time. So that was also a pivot and an adjustment for my family and for me. Now I'm traveling all over doing fun things like that. And then that led to a leadership position. And I led the campus recruiting program at that same organization that I started as a contractor. And at about the 10-year mark, I was let go. And so that was I would have stayed there forever. I thought this was going to be my home. So that was a big moment, it is corporate America. It's not personal. I had to pull up my bootstraps and think about, where do I go from here? And what I realized was that I absolutely love campus recruiting. I had found the career that I wanted to be in. And now is the time to really pull it together and think about the strengths that I would bring to a different organization. What type of organization did I want to go to? It was I could start over. I could figure this out. It wasn't just the slow climb at the organization I had been with. Again, as everybody said, I reached out to network. I did a lot of research on what it looked like in different organizations where campus recruiting was maybe at a larger scale or more complex as to what I had been doing. And that's how I wound up at Infosys, where I've now been for 6 years. It's been a fabulous experience. And I would say, as everybody has, there's transitions along the way there, transitions in leadership, taking the opportunities to be involved in different types of programs within our organization that has grown my leadership. And some of that's been scary. Even those small transitions are a little bit nerve-wracking, but that is my story. And I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you all.
Yes, and thank you again. Each one of you has such a fascinating kind of experience that you've just shared with us. And you just touched on something, Nanci, that kind of goes into our next question. Transitions are scary, right? And they can be very, very uncomfortable. And for so many, it can potentially hold us back from actually pursuing what really drives us, right? Because it is really scary. So I'd love to just ask, Lisa here, how did you overcome any fear and/or uncertainty when making a move?
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces there is it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay for things to be scary, and you just got to do it anyway. Dayna mentioned also when going through the process of a startup is financial resources. You have to plan for those things and know that this is going to be a transition time. So you really have to take sort of that inventory of where am I emotionally, where am I financially, where am I with networking and knowledge and resources that are going to help me in this transition, and you make a plan for how are you going to address those areas. And by sort of working yourself through, these are the things I know, these are the things I have some resources in, these are places I must prepare myself, or maybe this is education I need to get. I went back to school and got a BA and an MBA. Dayna went back and got a technical MBA and an engineering MBA. Those sorts of pieces help prepare you for what's next. That's a big piece of it is, prepare what you can, identify that it's okay to be uncomfortable, and really have just in your mind that inventory of when I run into a place where I feel like I don't know what's happening or I don't know what to do, or these are the resources I can use. These are the coaches or mentors internally or externally that I can go to. These are the ways to get good feedback so I can help adjust. And having that sort of plan in place helps you with making that transition. And sort of the magic button would be you have to, for yourself, make it okay to say, I've tried this, I don't like it. Nanci mentioned, hey, I did education. I got to a place where this wasn't a good fit anymore. And it's because my circumstances or the things I valued changed. It's okay to try something and say, ooh, this isn't what I thought. What did I learn from this? And how does that help inform whatever the next step is? But you can't be afraid to say, I tried and this didn't work out like I thought. That's actually, as important in the growth process as finding what you like and what is a good fit. So those are the important pieces that I've learned.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think you touched on something that really resonates with me, and I think many people, right, who go through transitions, whether it be personally or professionally, right? Being uncomfortable is okay. And more often than not, it's when you get to that point where you're staying with that, right? That gets you to that next level of really thinking through what is next, right? And how do we make that happen? And all three of you did touch on this a little bit, right? Tapping into what are your strengths? Where are areas where you want to continue to grow? And what do you need to do to get yourself to that next level? So thank you for that. My next question is, what advice would you give to someone who is evaluating a career change or is looking to grow within their current position, but doesn't really know where to begin and where to start?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Thank you. I think first and foremost, we just talked about being okay, being uncomfortable, being okay, being afraid. I think that's step one, no matter what, when we talk about any sort of transition, to your point. And I don't want to completely make my head disappear here, but I even have a little quote taped to my monitor that is something about you can't grow without being in that place of discomfort. So finding a way to really put yourself out there and understand that with the pain comes something good. I hate putting it that way, but I really try to spin it that way for myself sometimes when things are rough. To the question in particular, I kind of break this up into two questions. I think there's a couple of pieces here. First of all, no matter what, I have a network of what I would call situational mentors that I go to so often for stuff like this. If there's an opportunity that comes up either within my current role or a different job altogether, or something that comes out of me from way left field that I think to myself, there's no way I could do this. Well, wait, hold on. Before I count myself out, let me go check with the people that know me really well and have tons of faith in me. So I rely on those mentors. I talk to them no matter what when we're in a situation like that. The other step, I think, when you're looking at either of these scenarios is look at the skills that you have and what you're hoping to be doing, right? I think there's so much richness in growing those skills that you have that you're already good at. So if those skills are in your current role, do they exist there? What can you do to grow those skills? Can you ask for more of a stretch assignment, a bigger project, something like that? If those skills aren't there, what can you do to build them? And I'm going to throw in a volunteering thread here. So the one thing I left out of my bio is that I'm also currently the president of the Society of Women Engineers Board of Directors. And if I rewind to when I started at GE, I was not on the board. I was just a section level volunteer at the time, it was funny. I was looking for a job, and I had been leading a nominating committee meeting for the section. My husband walked in, pre-kids. We were sharing an office. We were going into offices usually, but it was an evening call, so he walked into the joint office. And when I hung up from the call, he said, "Why aren't you marketing your remote team leadership skills?" I was still, working in a brick and mortar office where everybody was in that office. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "That's exactly what you just did. You've got a team of people. You were all on a call and you nailed that call." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I never really thought of it that way." And so that's where this transferable skills thing really starts to come in. What have you gained elsewhere that you can market when you're looking to make that change? And as you take an inventory of what you think you're good at or what skills you have or what you want to use, don't leave out those volunteering experiences. You can gain so much rich experience there. So I think those are my high level takeaways. I'm sure there's so many more, but high level takeaways for looking to expand your current role or change altogether.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that you just shared what we do outside of work, right? Because it can be so fruitful, and we often overlook those experiences, but they do play a critical role, right, in terms of how we go about our day-to-day, even on a professional level. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm actually going to skip over to another question, because many of you have talked about having a mentor and or a coach. And so I think one thing that really stands out for me is, I think more often than not, you hear from many people, how do I go about getting a mentor and or a coach? So maybe one of you might want to touch on that, what kind of guidance and support not only did you receive from your mentor and coach, but maybe how you went about seeking a mentor and coach.
Yeah, I'll jump in if that's all right. Related to mentor and coach. So a couple of things about that. Dayna mentioned the Society for Women Engineers. Societies like that, practice groups, even volunteer organizations that happen to be in the lane that you're interested in are a great way to find people to connect with. You're looking for someone that either has the job that you want or can give you really good feedback about where your strengths may align or not align with the role that you're looking for. And connecting with those organizations are really great ways to get there. Fairygodboss and platforms like that, where you can make networking connections and ask, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody that might be in an engineering leadership in this type of company or role that can help me with what are my strengths and weaknesses, and what sorts of things should I work on to become a good candidate for this particular role, or help me figure out if I am a good candidate for that particular role." But it really doesn't happen cosmically. So for those of you who are hoping that there is a fairy god mentor that just drops in, it's not likely. It's that same piece about aspirations. Aspirations without hard work get you just dreams. If you're looking for a mentor that's really going to help you move ahead, you must work to find that person. And in general, if you explain, what, you've got the job I dream about, or I think you do, can you help me with a personal assessment of, where my skills might align or where my education might align and where I have some growth pieces? I'd love to get myself on a career trajectory to where I might have your role one day. I've never turned that discussion down. So that's a great way to find somebody that can help you with development.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. And I think, again, it really just the ongoing conversation, right? You had to put in the effort, right, in the work, and you need to know what you're asking for. And again, it might be uncomfortable making the request and or the ask, but to your point, Lisa, you've never turned anyone down who's approached you really with a thought out ask and request. And we've all been there, so it's so great to be able to give back in that capacity. But again, the central theme is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And pushing the envelope a bit further. So I do want to circle back to another question. And again, I feel like all three of you did touch on this a little bit with education and potentially going back to school, but I'd like to dive a little further here. But, for anyone who's looking to explore a career transition and or pivot, what additional resources or tools would you recommend they might be able to use to explore a new career path?
Sure. I'll jump in if that's okay.
Perfect.
I think, right away we go to LinkedIn, we go to platforms, and now with the internet, you can do all of your research. I think another thing, though, is to think about ways to use those tools a little differently. So for LinkedIn, not only looking for what jobs are available, but then looking at people who hold those jobs. And LinkedIn gives you such an opportunity to look at their experiences, their skills. Are these skills that you have? If you don't have them, how do you get them? Different types of certifications that somebody has. I think that is a great starting point to really do your research that way. And then that could lead to, as Lisa pointed out, asking somebody, hey, I saw that you have all this great experience. I'm looking to try to transition into that. So I think that helps. And then also to build on the point that both Lisa and Dayna made, sometimes we tend to think that our networks are small. I was an elementary school teacher. My network in the corporate world was teeny, but my network was huge. And so to build on those types of relationships is amazing. And then also, as Dayna pointed out, ask people. Well, you did point out your husband told you didn't ask him, but I loved that. And I think that's great because people see things in us that we maybe don't see in ourselves, right? So I think finding opportunities to learn there. I know that we're talking about, you asked me about techniques, but I think all of this helps to be able to find your next position.
Yeah, I can agree with you more. I think oftentimes, right, we think we need to pursue it this way, but you just never know what opportunities might be there. And to your point, right, Nanci, with networking, oftentimes we think it is just your direct network, but in this day and age, it is so much about who knows who, right, and their willingness to make that introduction. And it really does lend itself, right? And we've all been in that position where we've been able to give back. So thank you for sharing that. So the next question here, I know it is a little bit subjective, right? Because we all measure success a little bit differently, but I want to open this up and maybe start with you, Dayna. How can you measure success of your career transition? And what would you do if you were worried it wasn't the right move? And I know you touched on that a little bit with the startup, right? And I think there is a little bit of a central theme there. You've got to try, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I would love to maybe have you elaborate a bit further on just how we measure success in general, and then really just specifically related to career transitions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this goes back to being okay, being uncomfortable, right? Let's just start with, I don't like to even try and think about that because I think I would get all up in my head trying to figure out if this was the right move or not. I've had that creep into myself a handful of times over the last 2 decades, and I say, even today, not today in particular, but this day and age, I wake up and I think back to 15 years and go, oh man, was that the right move? And then I'm like, you've got to get out of your head, Dayna. Like, you can't sit there and dwell on it. So I try not to measure the success. I try to gauge if I'm happy doing what I'm happy, right? Do I get out of bed every day? And am I okay going to work? Am I learning new things? Am I using the skills I have? That's my gauge of success. But I think if you're really worried about if it's the right move, first of all, if you think if the skills you want to use are in that role, if you think it's pushing you towards the direction you want to go, take the job. But then my advice is wait at least 6 months. Unless there's something egregious going on, right? Sexual harassment, something that you can't work around through the system that's in place at the company, then yes, by all means, throw the 6-month rule out the window. But my rule of thumb, wait 6 months, see if you're getting it, see if it's making sense, see if you're feeling more comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable, more comfortable doing it. Because change is hard, right? There's no doubt that change is hard. And even if you're just changing regular jobs, right? You're going from, let's say, one engineering role to a different engineering role at a different company. That's still change. That's still hard. We have to give ourselves grace and acknowledge that with that change comes pain, comes new things that our body, our mind have to wrap themselves around. So how do we make sure that we've geared ourselves up to be in the best possible position? Not necessarily if it's right? There's no right answer in this. That's my takeaway. There's no right answer in what your career path should be. It's what feels right. Are you happy? If you get to the end of that 6 months and you're still, it's not jiving, you're not happy with what you're doing, you're not using the skills you want to, it just doesn't feel right, then it's okay to admit you want to pivot back to what you were doing or even pivot a different direction. I think that it's really just acknowledging we might not know. We might not know for a long time if it was right. We may never know. But can you get out of bed every day happy with what you're doing, either from the skills you're using or the ethically, right? You're doing something that aligns with your morals and your values. If that's what's pushing you forward and you're happy with the way you're going, keep on the path. Don't worry about, will this for sure get me to the end destination? Between points A and B, there's a million different ways you can get there. And even if you did make a wrong step and took a position that feels like it's setting you back, you've gained something from it. You've grown somehow. And I think that's the important part to remember.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We gain from every experience, and, transitions in itself take time, but we often find ourselves wanting to quantify success very, very quickly. So I agree with you. Giving yourself the time to acclimate, right? Whether it be a new organization, a new role, there's so much that we're taking on. But yeah, I can agree with you more that if there isn't a real compelling reason for not being able to stay with something new, at least give yourself at least a minimum of 6 months to really kind of think that through. All right. So we've talked a lot about how individuals can take the initiative in driving their professional growth. But what role can organizations play in supporting their employees' professional development? We can go ahead and start with you, Nanci.
Sure. I think first and foremost, it's encouraging career development. It's making sure that there are opportunities not only for training and learning, but also opportunities to explore other careers that are happening within your organization, whether that's formal mentorship programs or informal mentorship programs, creating an atmosphere even within the teams. As a manager, I have a pretty big team, and I encourage everybody on the team. First, I try to find out as much as I can about them and what their interests are, but then encourage them to explore those interests and to grow their network within our organization to find out what are they doing down the hall over there. And in COVID land, I guess we're not down the hall, but what are they doing in that end of the business? And so I think that's really important. But I also, some organizations have career shadowing. Where you could follow somebody. I think you could also do that informally. You certainly can in our organization. Can I spend the day with you and find out what you're doing? That's also help. Also to promote opportunities within your organization. You have a great employee. You know that they like the culture. You know that they are a fit for your organization. You don't want them to be looking for that opportunity outside of your organization, right? So share the other opportunities. At Infosys, we do that regularly. There's emails that go out with other opportunities that are available. So people can look and see what's happening within the organization. But then you have to make it okay for people to transition to that other position. So I think it all goes to the culture and the acceptance within your company.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's super helpful. And yeah, I agree with you. Just retention of employees is key, especially for top talent. So the idea of promoting within is something that I know resonates with us within our own community. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Lisa, I'd love to hear from you on this one as well.
Yeah. So as you are seeking employment, it's a great thing to look at when you're looking at what company might be a great fit. So things that were really exciting to me about DISH and about opportunities here, there are 8 employee resource groups. DISH Women's Network happens to be one of them. I am co-chair of that. We have a formal job ladder program internally to teach people what's next in a career path and make it available, but also look at executives and what their paths have been. It's typically published on the internet, so it's easy to go find. But I went from manufacturing to manufacturing and distribution and logistics and transportation to wireless. The president of our organization went from finance to IT to in-home services to wireless. You're looking for a company that values and helps support those kinds of transitions and might have formal programs like DISH does. You're looking for good intern connections. Nanci talked about campus recruiting, organizations that have deep connections into campus recruiting and can show great career progression from people that started as interns that came to work. And I know that when I'm looking for interns, I'm dating with the intent to marry. I want to find people that are going to come to work for DISH afterwards. So look for really good, strong programs that have demonstrated value in the organization and great examples of people who are able to move through the organization to gain wider skill sets. Those are great things to look for in looking for a new company. And if you happen to be at a company that doesn't have those things, be the one to initiate. Start engaging with recruiting to say, hey, let's build a stronger program. Engage with your peers to say, can we get a job shadowing? Or GE has a really great leadership development program. Can we start something that's similar? They've got really great bones that they teach other companies about for building leadership development programs. Those are great things. If you don't have it, build it. And if you're looking for your next career, intentionally do the research and seek that out in the company that you're moving to, and then become a good partner and advocate in helping with those ways to move inside the organization.
Oh, thank you. I love that, Lisa. I think oftentimes people feel if it doesn't already exist, we're stuck and we can't do anything more. So yeah, that's really, really, really valuable advice there. And then, yeah, Dayna, I would love to hear from you as well.
Absolutely. So many great ideas already thrown out. I think a couple I want to highlight, making sure that the professional development opportunities, regardless of what they are, if it's leadership programs, even if it's like 1 hour lunch and learn classes or something like that, make sure that your employees know about them, right? Making sure that the companies are sharing what is actually available to their employees. Also, the ERGs, in our case, we call it the Women's Network, but we have a number of different resource groups. Many companies in this day and age have them. I think it's so important for employees to get active and engaged. I think it's also important for companies to share and promote. To your point, I think it was Lisa, when you're talking about hiring and looking for that next company you're going to work for, it's important to note whether those companies have that. A couple of other things, share if you do tuition reimbursement for various education programs. Make sure that your employees know that's available to them. Also share what it takes to get to the next step. You know, you've shared with your manager and other leadership what role you want. Make sure that the employees know what it takes to get there. And then finally, one that was important for me, no shocker here, since I'm involved with SWE, I wanted to make sure the company I worked for cared about SWE as much as I did. So when I went out and looked for companies, I was looking for somebody that either was a corporate sponsor or really involved with SWE, where I could walk in and know that I wouldn't have to start from ground zero and explain what is SWE and why it's important to me. I could at least have the framework for that discussion already in place.
Yeah, no, that's so incredible. I was a member of SWE back in my day and made a pivot. So we'll talk offline a little later, but I am conscientious of time and want to make sure that we get to a question that we have from one of our members from our community for our panelists. So it's kind of a long one here, but would love to get your input here. I've been in my industry for a long time and I'm ready to make a change. I've applied for many roles, but I'm struggling to convey how my leadership skills translate into another industry. I've tried applying for roles at other companies in different business areas and tried to shift into other departments with no success. What should I do? I'll let anybody take it from here. I know we've got 2 minutes, but yeah, does anyone want to take this one? I feel like we've touched on this a little bit throughout our conversation here today, but any kind of final advice on
I'll take a run at this one. I might reflect back to the discussion of find somebody that's got the role you have, reach out and say, I'm looking for a transition into this. I'd love to talk to you about just my experience and help me with, do I have great parallels here and how might I refine my resume? For an hour investment, I'll buy you lunch. Are you willing to meet? You will very rarely get turned down. And what you might learn are some maybe keywords or ways to explain your accomplishments that might be good parallels that are going to ring the right bells with those who are looking for hiring in those jobs.
Great.
I'll add on super fast. I know we don't have a lot of time.
No, please.
I actually have a nevertheless she persisted sign up because I'm not even going to say how many interviews and job applications I went through some of these transitions. I'll be honest, some of the times I knew the people and it was the network that I had that helped me get in. Sometimes it wasn't. It was that blind application and I had to go back through the job description and be like, why did you want to talk to me? Like I was just blindly applying and I'm happy it worked out, but why did you want to talk to me? So don't give up. I hate being the person that's going to say that, but don't give up. But remember, it can come from either side. Keep that network strong, but also look for things that are of interest.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to kind of close out here. We all know that making a career transition can be daunting and very challenging, but with the right mindset, preparation, and support, it can also be really rewarding and a very fulfilling experience. I want to extend a sincere thank you to our panelists for sharing their valuable insights and experiences on career transitions, and to our audience for your active participation in today's discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.